The Times reports tonight that house builders are warning the government's budget watchdog that Labour's pledge to build 1.5 million homes by the end of the decade is not achievable. In a private letter seen by The Times, a number of British developers say that the current forecasts by the Office for Budget Responsibility for Growth, driven by house building, are too optimistic and should be revised. Rico Wojtulewicz is the Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders and joins us now. Good evening, Rico.
Good evening.
What do you make of this? Do you think that building 1.5 million new homes by the end of the decade is achievable?
No. We've been very consistent on this since the moment Labour came in, really. It's fair play to them for setting a considerably large target, which actually other governments, previous governments have set and other parties promised. But there's a lot to unravel, particularly some of the nightmare scenarios the last government left them with. And I don't think they've quite got to grips with all of that yet. They are improving, they are meeting industry, they are discussing the things, so credit to them. But yeah, they're not going to hit it. It's just too great a number with what's going on out there.
I mean, what ministers have been saying is that they are pushing through this big planning and infrastructure bill, which will speed up the planning process, that will make it easier for developments to go ahead, and that they hope that the pace of new homes being delivered will start to pick up. But do you think that it's still unrealistic that they could get to this target?
Yeah, completely, because the reforms that are currently put in place are infrastructure based or for very large projects, so new towns, unlocking electricity infrastructure, reservoirs, all these things are enablers of housing, but they themselves may take up to 5-10 years even to deliver. That then gives local authorities and councils more confidence to be ambitious and push back against NIMBYs, with the vocal minority that say, they've got all these issues. So that's like a chicken and egg enabler. But when you're coming to actually building homes themselves, if you look at what's going on at the moment, the loss of Help to Buy, people are selling at this stage one home a month, and there are lots of other elements that compound the issue. So, say for example, you've got affordable housing on your site. The housing associations aren't taking that affordable home. So after a couple of months, the council then charges you a council tax on that. And then a year later, they double that council tax, even though they're the ones that require the affordable homes in the first place. So you are taking businesses that are already struggling and ripping out all of their potential profits and opportunities, which just makes them shrink and shrink and shrink, which means that when you actually get to investing in a planning application, you don't have the money.
So, I mean, when the government set this target, it clearly hoped that would in itself help to galvanise people like the builders that you represent and work with. I mean, what is the problem? Why can't they just get on and build these houses?
So, as an example, we've had 15 new taxes on the industry in the last 3 or 4 years. Some of them are still filtering through now. We've got other taxes that have been, or regulatory changes that are going to cost money. And all these can't be absorbed, so it makes projects unviable. But then you have the actual planning system. People think just planning is getting a planning permission. It's not. One, it's the local authority accepting that site as part of their allocation strategy to deliver X amount of homes. But then there are things that are called pre-commencement conditions or pre-occupation conditions, and all these things require sign-off. So when you get a planning permission, it's not just getting a permission and getting on to build. You often hear this 1.4 million homes that have been unbuilt. It's a nonsense, because unless you can actually physically get on site to start working and finish the project because you're permitted to do so, that's not a permission to deliver a home. So planning is extremely complicated, and there are so many nightmare elements that just end up stopping all homes. And the best example I use is self-build. Local authorities are always saying, we need homes for local people. So they've got a register of people that are local that want to build homes in their area. That list has got longer and longer and longer and longer. So why aren't we enabling those? Because ultimately this is a land use issue. And the planning system as it is, as complex as it is, just adds extra costs and burdens to that, particularly for smaller companies delivering up to 150 homes a year. They are decimated.
And this is, it's bad news for the government because it's been an important manifesto commitment to deliver these new homes, but it also feeds directly, doesn't it, into the forecast for growth, because the government is absolutely relying on the building and the delivery of these new homes to try to get the wider economy going. And if it's not happening, then they're not going to get that growth, and that's going to hit those forecasts. A further headache for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, look, I do think this government have been far more ambitious than previous ones, and unlike previous ones, they've actually started to carry through a lot of the policies. So I think that is, sometimes I feel harsh being very critical, but we are in a position whereby they really have to know what the issues are so they can unpick them. They are really trying, but you're correct, because people think of it as house building. Well, that's correct, but house builders also contribute to the roads and other infrastructure locally, schools, hospitals. So if they're not building, you're not getting the money for that. But they also deliver all the skills for civil engineering, for the commercial buildings, for the education facilities. So when you're impacting the house building industry, you're impacting the broader construction opportunities, even roads and rail and all those elements. So that's where the other elements of growth that are so key. And we're talking about climate targets and retrofit. You will never retrofit our buildings if you move to purely volumetric off-site, or ignore the smaller companies that train the broader supply chain, because they're the ones that have got to fix our 16 or retrofit our 16.5 million homes built before building regulations, 12.5 million to traditional standards. So understanding all and picking all this is so important. It's why I love my job, because I effectively regurgitate my members' views and kind of collate them in an organised manner. But it's a brilliant industry, but it can't be held back. And this government's trying, but they have got so far to go. They are listening, but I think they need to listen a lot more quickly, because their plan from the start wasn't nuanced enough and didn't quite understand how the sector works.
And we've got the budget coming up in less than a month's time. We're hearing all kinds of different ideas being floated, leaked day by day. What would your message to the Chancellor be? What do your builders need if they are going to get on and build a bit more and maybe boost the economic growth a bit more?
Yeah, so we know there's a couple of consultations coming out, reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework, that hopefully will focus more on that kind of small and medium-sized build up to 250 homes a year as one company, or sites of 150. National Development Management Policies, which is kind of regional and spatial planning. But the builders need help to buy Mark II. Made the government 1.8 billion. If you've got problems with it, fix those problems, but don't just rule out a policy. But the one thing they have to get to grips with, and the one thing that we are pretty worried about, the whole industry, is the landfill tax. We've worked very hard to get that on the agenda. I think the government understands it. It's a DEFRA policy, and HMT, Treasury, had to kind of push it through. Don't bring that in, because it's not a serious policy for a circular economy.
Well, we're almost out of time, but what is the landfill tax?
Basically, so when you're taking stuff out the ground, if it's organic or inert, it's charged at a certain rate, £4 and 5p. Everything else, like metals and plastics, that's charged £126 and 15p. If it's put to landfill, the government wants to remove that lower rate of £4 and 5p and charge it £126 15p. What that means on a development site is, if you can't reuse that material or get it recycled in some way, you pay between £5,000 and £50,000 per home extra. So you're going to kill all development projects, and it means that HST will cost billions more. Every commercial building will be really difficult to deliver, because they use the whole footprint, so they can't reuse the soil and stones and chalks on site. So they really need to rethink that. We don't mind recycling stuff, but allow it to happen. Don't just assume you can do it via taxation, because it's not going to work.
Rico Wojtulewicz, Head of Policy and Market Insight at the National Federation of Builders. It's been really good to have your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Carol. Cheers.
You're listening to Carol Walker on Times Radio.